Hello, welcome to the Ref Show. Topics this week, another Ashley Young dive storm. But with the boot on the other foot, should we be looking out for those players who don't take a dive, who stay on their feet? We have an example this week of a player perhaps who should have been acknowledged with a penalty awarded to him. Overhead kicks, have we booted those out? What about the Premier League's youngest referee? Is he back on his feet? And never mind a successor for Howard Webb, where are the successors to Can and Malarkey, the assistant referees? With me is Glenn Turner, England's former World Cup assistant referee, and with Keith Hackett, our resident expert here. Glenn, we'll start with a line call, an offside call straight away. Everton 2, Arsenal 2, and quite a clear one really that was wrong.
Yeah, hi Alan. There is a point where it becomes pointless trying to defend the indefensible, and unfortunately for a quality assistant was involved with that particular incident, and a very good friend of mine, I have to say, it is pointless trying to defend it. It's a poor decision, it's an incorrect decision. What we really ought to be looking at is perhaps the reasons why Andy came to reach his the decision that he did.
This is Andy Garrett, and in fact, in the lead up to that, there appeared to be a clear foul as well that wasn't spotted by the referee, who was Kevin Friend.
Yes, and unfortunately that just goes to prove two wrongs never do make a right there, Alan. It was an incorrect decision by Andy. I say it's probably we're better spending our time looking to why he reached that decision.
Maybe later we could come on to the question of whether the quality is there in the training of assistant referees, and whether we have got people pushing to take over the mantle of the pair that assisted Howard Webb at the World Cup. Keith, actually in that game as well, we've got to be fair that across the board this weekend I think quite a number of referees did very well, but there was quite a nasty looking challenge by Jack Wilshere in that game that wasn't penalised.
This player unfortunately is pretty regular at doing this type of challenge and getting away with it. So I think that from a refereeing coaching point of view, you'd be saying to your referees in the group meetings, look, this is the one that we should be detecting. The one that is clearly reckless, it endangers the safety of an opponent. And, you know, if the referee wants to look at it another way, he can say it's a yellow card. He can't ignore it, and he has to see it.
Okay, so you're saying no excuses on that particular one. Just throwing Glenn another one, Hull versus Stoke, and a throw-in call that became crucial because from it was wrongly awarded to the wrong team. Stoke scored a late equaliser. It actually wasn't the assistant referee who gave it, it was the referee John Moss.
It was the referee John Moss, but you know, we don't stand out there as 3 or even 4 individuals. We are a team, and the old adage is, you know, we rise to the top together, but if one goes down, we all go down together as well. And just because John perhaps made the call, we don't know what was being said in his ear. We don't know whether there was any covert message coming from his assistant referee, and if there wasn't, I'd be asking the question, why wasn't there? Because even though you may argue that John was even closer to the incident, did he have the best view of the incident? Even if he had the best view of the incident, did the assistant still have a view of the incident that he could have offered John? But we're okay because it's Steve Bruce and we know what a calm character he is anyway, and I'm sure he took it very well. Another poor decision, and in the past people have said, well, it doesn't matter, it's only a throw-in. Clearly, every decision matters, and what may at the beginning appear to be a very small, insignificant decision, i.e. a throw-in, has led to a crucial equalising goal.
Now, people will
May
say,
next year, that may well be a very important decision.
The old cry goes up, the officials go home and don't worry about it, nothing happens to them.
No.
Couldn't be further from the truth, Keith. How would that impact on a mark that a referee gets?
Well, because a goal has been scored and it should not have been scored, it then becomes a major incident. And if the referee's got a major incident wrong, then the maximum mark that can be awarded is a 6.9 out of 10. And so there is a marking system that penalises a major error.
So he's already lost 3.1 from his maximum mark of 10 as a result.
Absolutely, and you know, again in the review process, that'll have come through. He will have discussed it. I think for a senior referee, to suddenly overrule his assistant referee and not just give himself time. If you look at the very best referees that around the world and those in the past, they develop this time element, that ability to think, to just wait and see, you know. And I would tell you that guys in the local park in and around Sheffield would just do that. Ball goes out of play, they haven't got a clue, whose ball is it, we wait, and the guy who's gone and fetched the ball from off the other pitch is the one that's going to take the throw.
It's a great
common sense.
It's a great point Keith makes. The players will help you out more often than you actually realise if you give them the time to do so. At the point where they're no longer helping you out, then of course you have to make your own decision. But just going back to the point you raised about the marks, Alan, yeah, okay, marks can be important to people, but I'll tell you a little bit of advice I was given fairly early on in my lining career. When your assessments come through again, first thing you do is just fold the bottom of the page at where the mark is, read the assessment. People get too hung up on marks. And I did it. I did it for almost a whole season, and I feel that was one of my best seasons as an assistant referee. I stopped being so hung up on marks, and if you really want me to finish the story, come the end of the season when the merit table came out, I was lucky enough to be top. Now, was that as a result of not being hung up by what it said at the bottom of the page? The performance is not all about your mark. The performance for me was how it feels in here. And when I got in my car and drove home, having made an incorrect, poor decision, I felt terrible. I didn't need a mark at the bottom of a sheet of paper to tell me I'd had a bad game. I knew I'd had a bad game, and so did everybody else in my family and in my friendship groups as well, because I was unbearable to be with. If I made a poor decision on a Saturday, I wasn't worth knowing until the Wednesday. It's like there with a sore head. So can we get that one put to bed straight away, that we do care? None of us want to go out there and make a poor decision and find ourselves on the back page of tomorrow's newspapers. We don't want it. We want to go there, be unknown, drive home, still unknown. We don't want to be on the back pages.
Yeah, good point. You know, there are two points from this particular incident, and that is the referee coach looking at this particular incident will ask a couple of questions. First one, is the referee fatiguing? You know, we've talked about, is he professional, is he not professional? He's professional in his mind, but is he preparing the same way as the Clattenburgs of this world? Because he is, as I understand it, a part-time select group referee. So is it a fatigue situation, or is it the usual problem, which comes whereby concentration lapses for a few seconds and the game then punishes the referee or the match official very quickly?
Two great points that Keith makes there about fatigue and your life outside of football, and he makes 2 points very well. You can again bring them together, because if you're going into a game tired because you've gone there straight from work and you know full well that you've got to drive home and get back up for work at 5, 6 o'clock the following morning as well, you are tired. And that brings into question the whole question of professionalism. If professionalism is the wrong word, full-time assistant refereeing for me, and full-time refereeing.
Okay, well, let's move on to an issue that might be getting tired, but it'll keep us talking for the whole season if we're not careful, and that is diving. Let's not use simulation on this programme. Let's call it diving. Ashley Young was booked, playing for Manchester United at Sunderland. He was cautioned by Martin Atkinson. Any complaints?
Only aimed at Ashley Young, none whatsoever aimed at Martin. Good to see a senior referee putting his stamp down and saying, this is my marker early doors. I am not allowing that on this field of play.
And also his reputation goes before him, so if there's any kind of grey area any time, it's not really in his favour, is it? The referee, Keith, is not going to be thinking, I may have got that wrong.
No, I think that we saw a very experienced referee getting in a right position, using a lot of, if you like, experience to make a crucial decision. They're not easy for the referees to get right, these.
Well, we had this a week ago when we were debating one that a referee got wrong, and we'll level out with some praise for that referee a little bit later, Michael Oliver, who's covered with an excellent game. But it does lead to a debate potentially about an incident that we all saw at the weekend during a very good Everton-Arsenal game, in which Leighton Baines made a typical run into the box, And I think the replay, slow motion, showed there were 2 occasions where he could have gone down. He was either pulled or pushed. He stayed on his feet and got nothing. Tell me the fairness there.
None.
Isn't it great to see that? Isn't it great to see? Because, you know, too many people are too quick to level criticism at professional footballers. And there's a good, honest pro in Leighton Baines, staying on his feet when some others may well have gone down, looking for an easy option. So good for you, Leighton Baines. You briefly mentioned something it's maybe worth picking up about players' reputations. And it's a question I've often been asked when I let people know about how we prepare just before a game when we meet up in the hotels. And what do you talk about is the question I get asked. And it's exactly that we talk about players and their reputations. Now, we don't do that because we go into a game having predetermined that player is always going to dive. What we're doing is making each other aware that, I had that player recently, he's starting to go down very easily. So I don't want you to go into today saying every time he goes down he must have taken a dive.
It's not
but be aware.
Not a massive leap of imagination then to think that Martin Atkinson and his team will have been talking about Mr. Young before that game.
Yeah.
What about the point though, Keith, about the Leighton Baines of this world? We saw in the World Cup with Messi, he always, if possible, stays on his feet. I think I'm right. I don't think he got a penalty in the World Cup when he might have done. In ordinary, are we protecting these players enough? Doing enough for them?
Well, the balance is out of skew, isn't it? Here's a dishonest player, and he's getting the right punishment. And there are many who are doing that and not getting punished. Hence my view about video and retrospective punishment. Here is a player who's kept on his feet, yet he's been fouled in the penalty area. This is courage from the referee that's required and the team of officials. If a player has been fouled in the penalty area, then the law's quite specific. That's a penalty kick. So Leighton Baines should have had a penalty in that scenario. So in a sense, he's been let down by the referee. They're not easy decisions to give, those where the players do stay on their feet, but nonetheless, if we want to encourage players to be fair and not to dive, then very much we've got to award a penalty kick in that situation.
And on the subject of fairness, we gave Michael Oliver a bit of a going over this time last week over the Diego Costa caution for diving. He should have actually awarded Chelsea a penalty. He's gone on to get the biggest game of the following round of fixtures despite that. Manchester City 3, Liverpool 1, and I've just got a blank space here for any errors or contentious incidents.
I think Michael Oliver demonstrated what I think we all know, that he is an outstanding official. What I was trying to do last week was to say outstanding officials are consistent week in, week out. The Webbs of this world were, and if you like, gain their reputation by being consistent at a very high level. And I think that's where we want Oliver to be. And therefore, what I saw in his performance this week was that small adjustment that we recommended, and that was explosive sprinting. I just wonder whether, in fact, either Mike Riley or Howard Webb had a little bit of a chat in his ear and say, look, it's easy to gain a reputation, but it's easier to lose it. So therefore, I think praise to him on that. I think he did extremely well, and credit to him because he demonstrated how good a referee he is.
How lovely to see a lad who had his difficulties the week previously though out on arguably the biggest game of the weekend.
Indeed,
and to come through it in the way that he did as well. So credit to him, because had it gone wrong again this week.
Okay. Well, quickly, because we've got a debating point to finish with. I've got to be in the bonnet. Overhead kicks. First weekend of the championship season, looked a perfectly good goal, brilliant spectacular. One of the great spectacles of the game, an overhead kick. Dennis Law, Mark Hughes, and all of those. This was Albert Adoma of Middlesbrough got disallowed. The current round of Premier League fixtures, Fletcher of Sunderland, overhead kick goes wide, but no fouls given. So where are we on overhead kicks? Has it been booted out, Keith?
No, I mean, if a player wants to use that skill set and put it in the back of the net, and he's not putting another player in danger around him, and that's where the referee comes in to reading. Has he, in making or going through that process of an overhead kick, has he put other players in danger?
Is he being too pernickety about that now, the referee, though? Surely he is potentially going to put a player in danger simply by going for that ball.
I'll tell you what, when I refereed, and that's a long time ago, I would take very great care about whether I was going to rule a goal out or not. Because the game is about scoring goals. And as a consequence, you know, I can't understand why the referees ruled it out. I didn't see anybody in danger. There's nothing in the law that prevents him from a overhead kick. You know, it's part and parcel of the skill sets of players.
Glenn, you made a point just before we...
Yes, for goodness sake, let's not start ruling out overhead kicks, because the likes of Mark Hughes' goal tally would have halved overnight. Goodness me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's come on to Glenn's specialist subject to finish with. And we all talk about where's the next Howard Webb, and we've got some contenders, two or three really, including Michael Oliver. The cans and malarkeys, the assistant referees as you were, are we producing enough of the right quality?
To answer your question directly and simply, no. No, and I'm genuinely concerned where the next Darren Canny is coming from, because like all of us, Darren will have a shelf life. He'll come and he will go, and I'm not sure who's going to take over that mantle, because for me, we're talking about not just England, we're talking about the world's #1 assistant referee. And who's going to carry that mantle for England? We've been very fortunate in the past to almost have a continuation of that #1 spot being filled by English assistant referees. Phil Sharp, Darren Cann. We've been very fortunate.
And yourself,
yeah, well, I wouldn't be so bold as to say so. Well, thank you. We've been very fortunate to be able to hold that slot for as long as we have, and I use the word fortunate very carefully, because I do believe it's a sad reflection that those people who have reached the very top as assistant referees have reached the top despite the advice and support that's being given to them, not because of. Because having been in that little bubble of 3-4 top assistant referees, we used to support each other. The structure is certainly there. It's undeniably there for assistants coming onto the list fresh. When you get into the top 1, 2, 3 spots, the quality of coaching is unfortunately not there to support those boys. They know more and perform better than their coaches ever did.
Is that because there's not a Glenn Turner or a Phil Sharp there among the coaches, Keith?
I'm just surprised. I mean, we ran very fortunately with a guy called Paul Rigier, who was an international assistant referee, understood what was required, but his great positive aspect was to actually draw people in, like Glenn, into the debate, into the if you like, the circle of saying, look, I want your advice. He was always open to advice. And I think allowing him to go, he's now doing a great job in America with the referees as well as the assistant referees, proving the point. So my answer is, we have, as Glenn said, got a huge reputation across the world in terms of the quality of assistant referees. And generally we see that at the Premier League level pretty consistently. Not to engage people like Glenn, Phil Sharp, hopefully Darren Cann and Mike Malarkey when they complete their service, is a big mistake.
Okay, thanks chaps. Good to talk to you, Glenn, Keith as ever. And of course we'll be back with the Ref Show next week. And in future, by the way, we have a new member of the team. We're delighted to welcome former Premier League referee and an inspirational man as well, having beaten cancer, Mark Halsey. He's joining the You Are the Ref team. Thanks ever so much for watching. See you next week. Bye.